Amendment. I'm sure you hold the Second Amendment near and dear to your heart when it comes to firearm ownership rights. But tell me, the word being bandied about, Orwellian, and I can hear the critics here in Canada scoff, oh, that's an exaggeration. But is it really? I mean, the way we have seen the government clamp down, first of all, funding their favorites in the media, and then declaring media non grata that are independent because, well, you're not approved media. In 40 years of practicing journalism, I've never heard such claptrap as approved and non-approved media by government. Your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that anybody would be outraged about a declaration from the U.S. about our war on information here, and I think it's just a symptom of how far It's really the boiling frog, right? Canadians have become so conditioned to this. I mean, you would think that like if the Trudeau government had existed, of Justin Trudeau had existed 30 years ago and tried to pay $600 million to the media, like that would have been the end of their administration. But we become so conditioned to having to be protected, from information that we don't like, that we'd be outraged at the reality. Like, well, that report is real. It's completely reasonable and it hits the mark. And I just want to say something about the Sean Foyt thing. I'd never heard of Sean Foyt before. Yeah. Never even heard of him. And now he's a household name. Yep. I mean, I see him in my algorithms and on X, and I'm paying attention to what he's saying. It's the Streisand effect in real time. And so that's the optimistic commentary. It's that they try to tar and feather this guy, and it has made him famous in Canada. So good on them.
I could have said it better myself, Rod, and I did bring up that point to Sean. He could barely contain his smile, but I said, you really ought to be sending a thank you card out to various governments in Canada and Antifa and the mainstream media and the Rainbow Mafia and the Islamists, because thousands and thousands of people, who knows what the number is, have made you suddenly a household name. You're getting more donations. You're selling more books and CDs. It's Christmas in August, so I think you're absolutely right. But, Harrison, tell me, especially with you being a journalist, to what Rod said earlier about the whole idea of hundreds of millions of dollars, even, a decade ago, this being unthinkable in terms of journalistic organizations being paid off like that. I can tell you, Harrison, I think I'm the only one at Rebel News who actually went to university for a journalism degree in the early 80s at Ryerson, not called Ryerson anymore, but that's kind of making my point about cancel culture. But here's the deal. Even then, the vast number of professors were left-leaning, 100%. But they would, if they were still around today, well, let's put it this way. Wherever they are, they're rolling in their caskets over this. They never would have gone for this. They used to complain about page 3 being sold for an advertisement because that's the second most important page after page 1. This is how far we've moved. What say you, my friend? Because when I look at it, how can you, without bias, cover an entity that is funding you?
Well, exactly. And I have to say, I am a fellow alumni of the Ryerson journalism program. I didn't know that, David. A perfect example of this, of exactly what we're talking about, is in the reporting of the U.S. State Department's criticism of the Press Freedom Bill. This is from the Canadian Press, by the way. And this is just so bizarre to me. The two the two professors, which are highlighted in the article, which has been shared by CTV News, which has been shared around by all of the media that actually take government subsidies, these professors are calling what the State Department was doing as Orwellian. So it's like this weird backwards world we're living in. So the media that receives the money from the government that is benefiting from these pieces of legislation, which the State Department are now criticizing as Orwellian, are telling us that really it's the State Department that's Orwellian. I just don't understand what's going on here, really. But that to me is a perfect example of the consequence of the subsidy package, the Online News Act, all of this stuff. And let's just also note the fact that what I found interesting in the State Department piece is that they take issue with the diversity quotas which are promoted in the Online News Act for these subsidy taking news organizations. That, of course, gets buried at the bottom of the article, but it should have been put right at the top, I think.
No, you know what? You raise a fantastic point. And Harrison, let's be honest. Their narrative, with this Canadian press story, which I think the journalist used to be Stephen Guilbeault's teacher's pet back in the day, one of his favorites. It's MAGA, you see. That's the problem. It's not free speech. It's not First Amendment. These are evil MAGA people behind this. This is how, I guess, colonized mainstream media is in Canada right now.
Well, I won't be able to believe that when Canadians go on Instagram and realize that all the news is blocked, when they go on Facebook and realize they can't access any news anymore, I don't think that the average Canadian goes, "Oh, well, this is good because this is how we fight back against MAGA forces." I think they look at it and go, "This is bizarre. What happened to my news access?" Of course, they're going to try to paint it as some sort of MAGA criticism, and really you've seen that in the response from the mainstream media to every piece of criticism laid out by the Donald Trump administration towards Canada. It's a lot easier for the mainstream media and for the government to dismiss it as MAGA claims or conspiracy theories if instead of actually just looking at it and saying, well, maybe there's something here. Like maybe there is something about us having an open border that we should protect, or we should deal with the fentanyl crisis. It's not all just MAGA conspiracies, but it's an easy way to dismiss it all, and I think we're going to see more of it.